Is that true that Jewish people was start their country in Israel and taking away a lot of resources from the Arabian, taking a lot of resources from the Gaza? Is that the truth, that the people is living with lack of food, with lack of resources, to make them start the war?
No, I mean, not at all, because so when Israel was started in 1948, the whole land was desertic. There was just desert, and in the same way that some Palestinians, there was no changing history, and yes, some Palestinians had to be displaced into the portion of the land that was corresponded to them by the UN in 1948. But there were also Jews that had to move from the lands that they had lived in into the land that corresponded to them by the UN. So there was displacement on both sides, and the resources, the natural resources, were distributed fairly equally. It has all been a thing of action and being able to put in the work and put in the effort to make Israel what it is now. 50 years ago and 30 years ago, Israel was almost nothing. And through a lot of work from Israel and a lot of just focus on putting money into the own country and putting effort into Israel itself, Israel has been able to become what it is now. And it's not that they took away resources from Gaza or Palestine. In fact, a lot of the services, like the utilities in Gaza, come from Israel. The water, the electricity, and they very often come at discounted rates. So there's very often this conversation that like Israel cut away Gaza's water or cut away electricity, and it's not that. It's they source the electricity and they source the water, which is very admirable, and they offer it at a discounted rate for humanitarian reasons. But sometimes they are forced to take that action because they, different reasons. Sometimes Gaza.
I studied that one thing. The most saving water country is Israel. The last 50 years, they developed the system, the reuse water system that we use most of the water, and this is comparing to the whole world. And they have the world biggest reuse water system, and I can tell how difficult it is, the environment, the natural environment, to living in the desert. And I know how Jewish people can work hard to achieve something. And once again, we just want to be educated about what happened, what's going on. People can blame on each other, saying, okay, you take away my stuff, you take away this and that. There's a long history. Our ancestor was slavery, and you have to pay back right now. It's not the case. We want to educate our next generation. We want to educate them. Nobody owes you, come to this world. We all equal.
Exactly.
You have to, find the best way for you, for your family, to live a good life.
So that's exactly what I was trying to bring up. So I assume I don't know what generation you are, but in the U.S., but your parents or grandparents came from China, or did you yourself come from China?
No, I'm a first generation.
You're a first generation.
Long enough. I came here 30 years.
Wow. Okay. So the question I would ask is then, do you consider yourself a refugee still? No. Okay. So a lot of the Palestinians that live in Gaza or in the West Bank are consider themselves to be second or third generation refugees. And personally, I think that mindset is very harmful for them. I could say myself, a lot of the Jews that have grandparents or great grandparents that were exiled or left Europe because of the Holocaust, they could consider themselves refugees. They could say like, oh, I'm second or third generation refugees. But that has never been the mindset in Israel or elsewhere for Jews. And I think that mindset is very key in the difference that we see now between Israel and Palestine in terms of how they've grown and flourished, or not in the case of Palestine so much.
What do you think about, what's the future for both countries? What are you hoping for?
That is very tricky. It's very difficult because I am hoping that Hamas steps out of power in Gaza and that the Palestinian Authority can take over. I think that the situation as it is with these two, the West Bank and Gaza being in control and existing with their own sovereignty is a good scenario. And I don't think that, some people, some very extremists might think that Israel should take over the whole land and all these ideas. But I think that the best scenario is with these two countries, these two independent sovereignties. The biggest help would be for other Arab countries to recognize Israel's sovereignty and Israel's right to exist. So over the last year, we saw the Arab Emirates and some other Arab countries around the Middle East recognize Israel's sovereignty, and I think that has really hurt Hamas's mission and power in the Middle East, and has really helped drive that peace forward. I think that what's difficult about the situation is that Israel, in order to protect itself, there needs to be some border, so that if an attack comes by, there's enough time, enough space for Israel to protect itself. And since this threat of an attack is always there, Israel is always trying to get a little bit more land to make sure that it has enough time and enough space to be able to protect itself. If it was demilitarized, then that could provide some more security and some more safety that maybe could stop some of the settlements. I think the biggest point is getting the terrorist group of Hamas out of the power in Palestine. So both the West Bank, so they have some influence over the West Bank and they're totally in control of Gaza.
Jack, I think we have a lot of information from you today. I'm very honored to have you in our show.